My name is Mary. I'm 65 years old, and I always believed I understood people. Not perfectly, of course, but enough to recognize when someone was sincere and when they were pretending. Life teaches you that. Decades of raising a family, loving deeply, losing deeply, it sharpens your instincts whether you like it or not. Or at least, that's what I thought. Because if I truly understood people, I wouldn't have been standing in my own backyard, frozen in place, listening to my daughter-in-law calmly plan the destruction of my son's life.
It was supposed to be a beautiful day.
I had spent weeks preparing for the baby shower. My first grandchild. Even saying those words filled me with a warmth I hadn't felt in years. After my husband passed, the house had grown quieter, emptier. My son Daniel visited often, but it wasn't the same. This baby, it felt like life beginning again. The decorations were soft and elegant, cream, pale green, little touches of gold. Nothing too loud. I never liked loud celebrations.
I preferred warmth over spectacle.
The table was covered with homemade food, mini pastries, sandwiches, fruit, everything carefully arranged. I wanted everything to be perfect. And Emily, my daughter-in-law, seemed grateful. She had that soft smile, that gentle voice everyone adored. She would touch my arm when she spoke, look at me like I mattered. I believed her. That was my mistake. "Mary, do you need help with anything?" my neighbor Susan asked, stepping into the kitchen while I was adjusting a tray. "I'm fine," I said, smiling. "Just making sure everything is in place." She laughed. "You've done more than enough already." Maybe I had, but this mattered. Daniel deserved this. After everything he had been through, the long hours at work, the pressure, the loneliness before he met Emily, I wanted him to have something real, something stable, a family. And Emily, she seemed like exactly that.
Kind. Simple.
Not materialistic. God, how wrong I was. At some point during the afternoon, I realized we were running low on napkins. I remembered I had stored extra boxes in the shed behind the garden.
It was a small thing.
A normal thing. If I hadn't gone to get those napkins, I would still be living in a lie. The garden was quiet compared to the laughter inside the house. The sound of voices faded as I stepped onto the stone path. And then I heard her. Emily. Her voice was different. Lower. Sharper. "I told you it's almost done," she said. I slowed down. Something in the tone made my stomach tighten. Another voice responded, her friend, Chloe, who had flown in for the shower. "How much longer do you have to pretend?" Chloe asked. Emily laughed. Not the soft, sweet laugh she used around us. This one was cold. "Just a little longer," she said. "Once the baby is born, everything changes." I don't know why I moved closer. Maybe instinct. Maybe denial. Maybe I already knew. "The inheritance transfers after the child is born," Emily continued. "Daniel gets full access." My heart skipped. Inheritance? She had never talked about that with me. And then, Chloe asked. There was a pause. And then Emily said it. "So then I take what I need, file for divorce, and leave." Everything inside me went silent. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. "Are you serious?" Chloe said, half laughing. "Of course I am," Emily replied. "Daniel is nice, but he's predictable. I didn't marry him for excitement." My hands went numb. I think I dropped the napkins I was holding, but I didn't hear them fall. "What about the baby?" Chloe asked. Emily didn't hesitate. "I'll have custody. That means child support. Maybe more, depending on how things go." There was no emotion in her voice.
No hesitation.
Just calculation. "I'll be set," she added.
Set.
Like she was talking about a business deal.
Not a family.
Not a child. Not my son. Something inside me cracked, but not loudly.
Quietly. Deeply.
Like glass breaking underwater. In that moment, everything I thought I knew about her shattered. All the smiles, all the kind words, all the small gestures.
Fake.
All of it. I don't remember walking back to the house. I don't remember picking up the napkins. I only remember forcing myself to breathe, to move, to act normal. Because I understood something very clearly. If I reacted too soon, she would deny everything. And Daniel would believe her. The rest of the party felt like a performance. I smiled. I served food. I thanked guests. I watched Emily as she opened gifts, laughing softly, placing her hand over her stomach like a loving mother.
And I saw it now.
Not warmth, not sincerity, but strategy. Every movement calculated, every expression controlled. At one point, our eyes met. She smiled at me, and I smiled back. But something in my expression must have changed, because for a split second, just a second, her smile faltered. That's when I knew.
She sensed something. Good.
That meant I had to move carefully, very carefully. Later, when most guests had left, Daniel came up to me. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked. "You look tired." I touched his face. "My son. My kind, trusting son. I'm just a little exhausted," I said. Emily joined him, wrapping her arm around his. "You did too much today, Mary," she said softly. "You should have let me help more." Her voice was perfect. Too perfect. I looked directly at her. "A mother does what she must," I said calmly. "Especially when it comes to protecting her family." Something flickered in her eyes. Just for a moment. Then it was gone. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat alone in my bedroom, staring at the ceiling, replaying her words over and over. Take the money, divorce, leave. Each time, it felt worse, sharper, more real. I stood up eventually and walked to my desk. Inside the drawer was a letter. My husband's last letter to me. I hadn't read it in months. My hands trembled as I opened it. There was one line I couldn't stop thinking about. "Trust your instincts, Mary, even when it's hard." I closed my eyes, because this time, my instincts weren't just whispering. They were screaming. By morning, I had made a decision. I wouldn't confront her. Not yet. I wouldn't warn Daniel.
Not yet.
Because words wouldn't be enough. I needed proof. I needed a way for Daniel to see the truth with his own eyes. Only then would he believe me. Only then could I protect him. And if that meant playing her game, then so be it. I wasn't afraid of her. She thought she was planning something clever. But she made one mistake. She underestimated me. I didn't sleep that night, and not because I was upset. It was something else entirely.
Clarity.
The kind that settles in when emotion burns out and leaves only cold, sharp thinking behind. I sat in my kitchen before sunrise, holding a cup of tea I never drank, watching the light slowly fill the garden where everything had changed just hours before. The same garden, the same quiet, the same rose bushes. And yet nothing felt the same anymore. Emily's voice kept replaying in my head, calm, confident, almost bored as she described dismantling my son's life like it was a routine plan. That was the part that disturbed me the most. Not just what she said, but how easily she said it. That wasn't impulse. That was preparation. And if she had planned this so carefully, then I needed to be even more careful. Because I wasn't dealing with someone naive or emotional. I was dealing with someone strategic. By the time the sun was fully up, I already knew one thing for certain. I couldn't go to Daniel yet. Not with just words. Not with something I overheard. He loved her.
Deeply.
And love has a way of turning even the smartest people blind. If I accused her without proof, I wouldn't just lose credibility. I might lose my son. And I wasn't going to let that happen. So instead, I would watch. I would listen. And most importantly, I would learn who Emily really was. That same afternoon, I called the only person I trusted to think clearly without getting emotional. Linda. We had been friends for over 30 years. She wasn't the comforting type. She didn't sugarcoat things. That's exactly why I needed her. You sound strange, she said the moment she picked up. What happened? I need you to just listen, I said. And I told her everything. Every word I had heard. Every detail. When I finished, there was silence on the line. Then she said very calmly, "You're sure?" "Yes."
No misunderstanding. No.
Another pause. "Then you have a problem," she said. "I know that." "No," she corrected me. "You have a smart problem." That made me sit up straighter. "Explain." She didn't panic. She didn't sound emotional. That means she's thought this through. Probably for a long time. Which also means this isn't her first time playing this kind of game. A chill ran through me, because I had been thinking the exact same thing. "I need to know who she really is," I said quietly. Linda didn't hesitate. "Then stop looking at who she pretends to be," she said. "Start looking at who she was before your son." That stayed with me long after the call ended. Who she was before Daniel. It sounded simple, but it wasn't, because everything I knew about Emily had come through Daniel, through stories, through introductions, through carefully curated pieces of her life. What if none of it was real? That evening, I sat at my computer and typed her full name for the first time with a different intention, not curiosity, but suspicion. Emily Carter. Nothing unusual at first. Social media profiles.
Clean.
Almost too clean. Professional pages. Minimal. Photos. Carefully selected. It was like looking at a perfectly arranged room where nothing was out of place, and yet something felt missing. People leave traces.
Mess. History.
Emily had none. And that alone told me something was wrong. I tried a different approach. Her middle name. Emily Rose Carter. This time, something appeared. Not much. Just a small article buried deep in search results. A local news piece from another state. I opened it, and there it was. A photo of her. Younger. Standing next to a man I didn't recognize. The headline mentioned an engagement. My stomach tightened. Daniel had told me Emily had never been engaged before. He had said her past relationships were nothing serious. So why was she standing in a photograph, smiling beside a man described as the son of a wealthy business owner? I read the article twice, then 3 times. The engagement had ended suddenly.
No explanation.
Just gone. That was the first crack. The next day, I called my niece Rachel. She worked in data analysis, very good at finding things people didn't want found. "I need you to look into someone," I told her. She didn't ask questions. She never did. "Send me what you have," she said. 2 days later, she sent me a file. I opened it slowly. And with every page, the picture became clearer. And darker. There wasn't just one man. There were 3. All wealthy. All from strong financial backgrounds. All relationships that ended abruptly.
No scandals.
No public drama. Just endings. Like someone closing doors behind her one by one. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. It wasn't coincidence.
It was a pattern.
And Daniel was just the next step. The realization didn't make me angry. Not yet. It made me focused. Because now I wasn't just dealing with suspicion. I was dealing with evidence. But still, not enough. Not enough for Daniel.
He needed to see it, feel it,
understand it in a way that couldn't be explained away. That meant I needed something more. Something undeniable. That opportunity came sooner than I expected. The next day, I decided to visit them. Unannounced. I brought containers from the baby shower as an excuse. Emily opened the door. She looked exactly as she always did, Comfortable, warm, welcoming. Mary, what a nice surprise, she said, hugging me gently. If I hadn't known what I knew, I would have believed her again. That thought unsettled me. I stepped inside. The house was spotless.
Perfect.
Too perfect. Photos lined the walls, her and Daniel smiling, laughing, living a life that now felt staged. But something caught my attention. Details. In every photo, Emily wore something expensive.
A watch. Jewelry.
Designer pieces. Subtle, but consistent. Not someone who didn't care about money. Someone who understood it very well. Would you like tea? She asked. Yes, I said. I watched her as she moved through the kitchen. Efficient, graceful, controlled. An actress who never dropped the role. How are you feeling about becoming a grandmother? She asked. I'm looking forward to it, I replied. That's how I feel too, she said. But her eyes drifted not to me, to the counter, to her bracelet, to things, always things. Then she asked it, casually, too casually. Daniel mentioned something about family finances the other day, she said. Something about property. There it was.
Fishing.
I kept my voice steady. I don't recall discussing anything like that, I said. Her smile tightened, just slightly, barely noticeable, but I saw it. Maybe I misunderstood, she said. Maybe. Or maybe you were checking what you could access. When I left their house, everything was clear. I didn't just suspect her anymore. I understood her. And that meant I was ready. Not to confront. Not yet. But to set something in motion. A situation she wouldn't be able to control. A moment where her real intentions would surface, naturally. Where Daniel would see it.
Not because I told him,
but because she revealed it herself. That evening I called her. I was thinking, I said calmly. We should have dinner this weekend. Just the three of us.
She didn't hesitate.
That sounds lovely, she said.
Of course it did.
Because she thought she knew what was coming. She thought this was about money, inheritance,
opportunity.
She had no idea.
It was a test.
And this time, she was the one walking into it. The morning of the dinner, I woke up with a strange sense of calm, the kind that only comes when a decision has already been made and there is no turning back. I moved slowly through my house, preparing everything with the same care I always had. But this time there was something else beneath it, precision. Every detail mattered now, not for appearance, but for outcome. This wasn't just a family dinner. It was a controlled moment, one I had designed carefully, step by step, knowing that one wrong move could destroy everything. I called Daniel early, keeping my voice light, as if nothing unusual was happening. Asked him to come by a little earlier to help me with a few things, something simple, something ordinary. He agreed, without hesitation. That alone reminded me why I had to do this the right way. He trusted me completely. I couldn't betray that trust by acting on emotion alone. When he arrived, I noticed immediately that something was off. It was subtle, but I knew my son well enough to see it. The way he rubbed his neck, the faint shadows under his eyes, the way his smile didn't fully reach them. Stress. Something had already started to shift, even before I said a word. You look tired, I said, placing a hand on his arm. He gave a small laugh. Just work, the baby, everything. It's a lot. I nodded, guiding him into the kitchen where I had already started preparing dinner. The familiar smell of food filled the room, something that had always made him feel at home. I needed him grounded. I needed him comfortable. As he reached up to grab glasses from the shelf, I watched him carefully, measuring my timing. I couldn't push too hard. Not yet. Is everything all right between you and Emily? I asked casually. He paused for just a second. Too quick for most people to notice. But not for me. Of course, he said, though his voice carried a slight tension. Why? I shrugged lightly. You just seem distracted. He hesitated again, then exhaled slowly. She's just been asking a lot of questions lately. My heart tightened, but I kept my expression neutral. What kind of questions? About money, he said. About the future, investments, inheritance, things like that. There it was. Not proof, but confirmation. And that bothers you? I asked. I don't know, he admitted. It's just new. She never cared about that before. I looked at him then, really looked, and I saw it, the beginning of doubt. Small, fragile, but there.
Good.
That meant he was ready to see more. I think it's normal to think about the future, I said carefully, not contradicting him, not pushing too hard. But sometimes it's worth understanding why someone is asking. He frowned slightly, processing that, but before he could respond, the doorbell rang. Emily, right on time. She entered like she always did, graceful, warm, perfectly composed. She kissed Daniel, then turned to me with that familiar soft smile. Everything smells amazing, Mary, she said. Of course it did. I had made sure of it. Tonight is important, I replied, meeting her eyes. For a fraction of a second, something flickered there. Interest. Expectation. She thought she knew what this was about. That was exactly what I wanted. Dinner itself was almost surreal. On the surface, everything looked normal. Conversation, polite laughter, small talk. But underneath it, there was tension building like pressure in a sealed room. Emily was charming, attentive, playing her role flawlessly, but I noticed the small details. The way her fingers tapped lightly against the table. The way her gaze kept shifting between me and Daniel, waiting for the real topic. She couldn't help herself. And finally, she brought it up. So, she said lightly, placing her fork down, you mentioned there were some important things to discuss? There it was. I leaned back slightly, giving myself a moment before answering. Yes, I said. There are. Daniel looked between us, slightly confused now. Emily leaned forward just a little, her attention sharpened. I could almost see the anticipation in her. I let the silence stretch just long enough. Then I began. Your father, I said to Daniel, was very careful when it came to planning for the future. Daniel nodded slowly. I know that. But there are details, I continued, that you may not fully understand yet. Emily's posture changed, subtly, but noticeably. More alert, more focused. What kind of details? She asked. I turned my gaze directly to her. The kind that protect a family, I said calmly. Her smile didn't disappear, but it froze. Daniel frowned slightly. What do you mean? I folded my hands in my lap, keeping my voice steady. The inheritance isn't as simple as you think, I said. Yes, certain things are triggered when the child is born, but the majority of the assets are protected. Protected how? Emily asked quickly. Too quickly. There's a trust, I said. One that remains under my management. The effect was immediate. The color drained from her face. Not completely, but enough. For how long? She asked. Her voice was quieter now. Until your child reaches adulthood, I replied. Or under specific conditions. What conditions? Daniel asked. I held his gaze. In the case of divorce, I said, the assets remain untouched. Neither party gains direct access. Silence. Heavy. Thick. Emily's fingers tightened around her glass. That doesn't make sense, she said suddenly, her tone sharper now. Daniel is an adult. Why would he not have full control? Daniel looked at her, surprised by the intensity. Emily. No, she continued, her composure slipping just slightly. It just seems unnecessary. Unnecessary? I repeated calmly. She caught herself. Too late. I just mean, she corrected quickly, it feels overly restrictive. Only to someone who expects access, I said quietly. That was the moment. The exact moment everything shifted. Daniel turned his head slowly toward her. Not fully suspicious yet, but close. Very close. I reached for the envelope I had prepared earlier. There's something else, I said. I handed it to Daniel. A letter from your father. He opened it carefully, unfolding the paper, his expression changing as he read. I watched him, not interrupting, not guiding. This had to come from him. When he finished, he looked up. Something in his eyes had changed. Understanding. Not complete, but enough. Emily sat very still. Too still. Like someone waiting for the ground to collapse beneath them. And I realized then, she had already lost control of the situation. She just didn't know it yet. I leaned forward slightly. Daniel, I said softly, there's something else you need to know. He looked at me, and for the first time, he was ready to listen. The moment Daniel looked at me like that, truly looked, not as a son listening politely to his mother, but as a man searching for the truth, I understood that everything I had done so far had led exactly to this point. There was no more room for hesitation, no more space for careful half-answers. If I stopped now, if I softened anything, I would risk losing the clarity that had finally begun to form in his mind. And yet, even knowing that, I still felt the weight of what I was about to do. Because once spoken, the truth would change everything. Emily was watching both of us, her body perfectly still, but her eyes moving quickly, calculating, searching for control that was slipping through her fingers. She didn't interrupt. That alone told me she was trying to regain balance, trying to anticipate what I would say before I said it. But this time she couldn't. I overheard something, I said finally, keeping my voice steady, grounded. At the baby shower. Daniel's brow tightened immediately. What do you mean? I didn't look at Emily.
Not yet.
This wasn't for her. I went outside to get something. I continued. And I heard Emily speaking with her friend. Now I looked at her. Her expression didn't change at first. That was almost impressive. Almost. And what exactly did you hear? She asked calmly.
Too calmly.
Daniel turned to her, confusion mixing with something sharper now.
I didn't rush.
I didn't dramatize. I simply repeated her words.
Carefully. Exactly.
Every sentence landed in the room like something heavy being placed on a table, one piece at a time, impossible to ignore once it was there. I spoke about the inheritance, about the plan, about the divorce, about taking the money and leaving. I didn't add anything. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't need to, because the truth was enough. When I finished, the silence that followed felt almost unreal. Daniel was staring at me, but not really seeing me anymore. He was replaying it in his mind, testing it, trying to fit it into the version of reality he had believed in for so long. That's not true, Emily said. Her voice came quickly this time. Not calm, not controlled. Sharp. Mary, you must have misunderstood, she added, shifting her tone immediately, softening it, trying to repair the first reaction. You probably heard something out of context. Daniel didn't look at her right away. That was the first crack. I didn't misunderstand, I said quietly. Now she turned to him fully, her entire posture changing. Softer shoulders, slightly trembling voice, eyes already beginning to shine with tears that hadn't fallen yet. It was a performance I might have believed just days ago. Daniel, you know me, she said. Why would I ever say something like that? He looked at her. Really looked. And I saw it.
Doubt.
Real doubt. Because there's more, he said slowly. That surprised both of us. Me and her. He reached for the folder I had left on the table earlier, the one I hadn't yet mentioned directly. His hand hesitated for just a moment before opening it. I watched as his eyes moved across the pages, recognition beginning to form piece by piece. You were engaged before, he said, his voice quieter now. Emily froze. Just for a second. Then she recovered. I told you about my past, she said quickly. No, he replied, looking up at her. You told me nothing serious. Her breathing changed. Slightly faster. It wasn't important, she said. And the others? He asked, lifting another page. Were they not important either? Now the mask cracked. Not completely, but enough. This is ridiculous, she snapped, the softness gone completely for a moment. You're letting her turn you against me. There it was.
The shift.
Attack instead of defense. Daniel flinched slightly at her tone. I'm not turning him against you, I said calmly. I'm showing him what you've already done. That's not what this is, she insisted, standing up now, her voice rising. You've never liked me. From the beginning. That was almost true, but not in the way she meant. I wanted to like you, I said quietly. Very much. That stopped her for a second. Long enough for Daniel to speak again. Just tell me the truth, he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried something stronger than anger. Finality. She looked at him. Really looked. And I could see it the moment she made a decision. Not whether to tell the truth, but which version of it would serve her best. Her shoulders dropped slightly. The tension shifted. The tears that had been forming finally fell. I didn't mean it like that, she said softly. A different strategy. I was scared, she continued. I didn't know how things would work. I was overwhelmed. I said things I didn't mean. Daniel didn't respond. He just watched her. And the silence forced her to continue. You know how I get when I'm stressed, she added, reaching for him slightly. This pregnancy, everything is so much. But he didn't move closer. He didn't take her hand. That was the second crack. No, he said quietly. This isn't stress. She froze again. This is a plan, he added. The words hung in the air, and for the first time, she had no immediate response. That was when I knew. It was over. Not the situation, not the consequences, but the illusion. It had finally broken. Her expression changed again, but this time, slower. Not controlled. Not calculated fast enough.
Honest. Raw.
And not in a good way. Fine, she said suddenly. The word came out flat.
Sharp.
You want the truth? She continued. Daniel didn't answer. He didn't need to. I didn't expect this, she said, her voice hardening. I thought things would be different. Different how? He asked. I thought I was building a life that actually gave me something, she said. Security. Stability. You had that, he replied. No, she snapped. I had you, not control. There it was. Not love. Not regret. Control. I didn't sign up to be locked out of everything, she continued. To live in a situation where I have no say. You mean no access, I said quietly. She didn't deny it. And that was the final confirmation. Daniel closed the folder slowly, placing it back on the table with more care than I expected. He looked exhausted now. Not angry. Not shouting. Just done. You should leave, he said. The room went still again. Emily laughed slightly, but there was no humor in it. And go where? She asked. I'm carrying your child. And that doesn't change the truth, he replied. Her eyes flickered to me, briefly, then back to him. You can stay at the apartment, he said, until we figure things out. Something shifted in her expression again. Calculation. Not emotional this time. Strategic. She picked up her bag slowly. This isn't over, she said.
No, y replica calmly.
But it's no longer hidden. She held my gaze for a second longer than necessary. Then she left. The door closed quietly behind her. And just like that, everything changed. Daniel sat down heavily, running his hands through his hair. I didn't see it, he said. It wasn't a question.
It was a realization.
I sat beside him, placing my hand gently on his shoulder. You trusted someone, I said. That's not a weakness. He let out a long breath. It feels like one.
I didn't argue.
Because right now, it probably did. We sat there in silence for a while, the house finally quiet again, but this time it wasn't peaceful. It was something else. An ending. And the beginning of something uncertain. Stronger, maybe, but harder. And I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't finished. Not even close. The next morning, I expected silence. Not peace, just the kind of emptiness that follows something breaking. But instead, the doorbell rang earlier than I anticipated, sharp and deliberate, cutting through the quiet of the house like a signal that whatever had started the night before was far from over. I already knew who it was before I even stood up. Some things don't require guessing. When I opened the door, Emily stood there, but not the Emily I had grown used to. There was no perfect posture, no carefully arranged expression, no subtle performance designed to disarm. Her hair was tied back loosely, her face pale, eyes slightly swollen as if she hadn't slept either. For a moment, just a moment, she looked smaller. Not physically, but in presence, like someone who had lost the certainty that once defined them.
We need to talk, she said.
Her voice wasn't soft this time. It wasn't sharp either, just tired. I stepped aside without a word and let her in. I didn't invite her to sit. I didn't offer tea. I wanted to see what she would do without being guided. She sat anyway, carefully, both hands resting over her stomach as if grounding herself. For a few seconds, she didn't speak, and I didn't fill the silence for her. This was not a conversation I intended to control. If she had something to say, she would have to say it on her own. I made a mistake, she said finally. I didn't respond. She swallowed, her fingers tightening slightly. More than one. That's accurate, I said calmly. She flinched, not dramatically, just enough to show she felt it. But she didn't argue. That alone was different from before. I know how it looks, she continued, and I know what you think of me. I leaned against the doorway, watching her carefully. What I think doesn't matter right now, I said. What matters is what's true. She nodded slowly, like she had expected that answer. When I met Daniel, she began, her voice steadier now, I did have intentions. She didn't look away when she said it. That surprised me. Intentions, I repeated.
Yes, she said.
I saw an opportunity. There was no point softening the word. She didn't try. That's the pattern, isn't it?
I asked.
She closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again. Yes. There it was. Not denial. Not manipulation. Admission. And yet, I didn't feel relief. Because admitting the past doesn't fix the present. What changed? I asked. She hesitated. For the first time since she arrived, she looked unsure. I didn't expect him to be different, she said quietly. I said nothing. Daniel doesn't act like the others, she continued. He doesn't lead with money. He doesn't use it. He doesn't even think about it the way they did. That's because he values people, I said. I know, she replied, and I didn't know what to do with that. There was something honest in her tone, but honesty can come late. Too late. At some point, she continued, her voice lowering slightly, it stopped being an act. I raised an eyebrow. That's convenient, I said. I know how it sounds, she replied quickly, but it's the truth. Silence settled between us again, heavier this time. And yet, I said slowly, you still made that plan. Her hands tightened. Yes.
No excuse. No justification.
Just yes. That doesn't align with love, I said. No, she admitted. It doesn't. I watched her closely then, searching for something familiar. Calculation, strategy, performance. But what I saw instead was something more complicated. Not pure honesty. Not complete deception either. Something in between. And that made it harder. I don't expect you to believe me, she said suddenly.
Not now.
Maybe not ever. That's realistic, I replied. But I need a chance, she added, leaning forward slightly. Not for the money. Not for anything like that. For the family. The word lingered. Family. A word she had treated like a transaction before. And why should I give you that? I asked. She didn't answer immediately. She thought about it. Carefully. Because I'm still here, she said. Even after everything fell apart. That could mean you're persistent, I said. Not sincere. She nodded slightly. That's fair. Again, no argument. No attempt to twist it. That made me pause more than anything else. I'm not asking you to trust me, she continued. I'm asking you to test me. That was unexpected. Test you, I repeated. Yes, she said. Give me something real. Something I can't fake my way through. I studied her face. Longer this time. Because now, she was either telling the truth or playing the most advanced game yet. And I couldn't afford to guess wrong. Daniel won't listen to me right now, she added quietly. But he will listen to you. That was true. And she knew it, which meant she was still thinking strategically, just differently. I walked into the kitchen slowly, giving myself space to think. I poured water into a glass, not because I was thirsty, but because I needed a moment to organize my thoughts. Linda's words came back to me clearly. Don't test words. Test actions. Actions. That was the only thing that mattered now. I returned to the living room and sat across from her. If I give you a chance, I said, it won't be on your terms. She nodded immediately. I understand. It will require something from you, I continued. Something real. Something you can't take back once it's done. I'm ready, she said. Too quickly. But this time I didn't stop her. Good, I said. Because in that moment, I had already decided. Not because I trusted her, but because I wanted the truth. And the only way to get it was to push her to a point where she had to choose. Not pretend. Not adapt. Choose. I stood up and walked toward the window, looking out at the same garden where everything had begun to unravel. You'll come to dinner tonight, I said. She nodded. And so will Daniel. She hesitated slightly. Will he agree? She asked. He will, I said, because I would make sure of it. And tonight, I added, turning back to her, you will prove whether you are who you say you are now. I paused. Or who you've always been. She didn't respond right away, but she didn't look away either. Okay, she said finally. Just one word. No performance. No emotion layered over it. Just acceptance. And for the first time since I met her, I couldn't tell what she was thinking. That unsettled me more than anything else. After she left, I called Daniel. He answered on the second ring. Mom, we're having dinner tonight, I said. A pause. With her, he asked. Yes. Another pause. Longer this time. Then a quiet exhale. All right, he said. That was all. No resistance. No questions. Which told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't done either. None of us were. That evening would decide something important. Not everything, but enough. Enough to move forward, or to finally walk away. And as I prepared for the second dinner, simpler this time, quieter, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to think before. This wasn't just about protecting my son anymore. It was about deciding whether a person who had done something unforgivable could ever become someone different. I didn't believe in easy redemption, but I did believe in truth. And tonight, I was going to get it. By the time evening came, the house felt different again. Not tense like before, not quiet in the same fragile way, but focused, as if everything inside it was waiting for a single moment to unfold. I didn't prepare anything elaborate this time. No decorations, no effort to impress, no illusion of celebration. Just a simple dinner, the kind you make when you care more about what will be said than how things look. Because tonight wasn't about appearances anymore. It was about truth, and truth doesn't need decoration. Daniel arrived first, just like before, but there was something heavier in the way he walked in. Not confusion this time. Not even anger. Something deeper. He looked like someone who had already started letting go of something, even if he didn't yet know what would replace it. He didn't ask questions. He didn't try to guess what I had planned. He simply sat down, quiet, waiting. "She came to see you this morning, didn't she?" he asked after a moment. "Yes," I said. "And," he pressed. I didn't answer immediately. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I wanted to choose the right words. "She admitted more than I expected," I said finally. "But words are easy." He nodded slowly, as if that matched exactly what he had been thinking. "So, what is this?" he asked. "Another test?" "Yes," I said. "But this time, it's not about what she says." He looked at me more carefully now, trying to understand, but before he could ask anything else, the doorbell rang. Emily, right on time again. She entered differently this time. No hesitation, no overly soft tone, no attempt to immediately rebuild what had been broken. She greeted us both simply, quietly, and took her seat without waiting to be guided. That alone told me something had shifted. Whether it was real or not, I still didn't know. Dinner passed in a strange kind of calm. No forced conversation, no pretending everything was normal. Daniel spoke only when necessary. Emily didn't try to fill the silence. I watched both of them carefully, not just listening, but observing the space between their words, the distance, the tension, the small moments that reveal more than anything spoken out loud. When we finished, I stood up and walked to the cabinet, taking out a folder I had prepared earlier that day. I placed it on the table in front of Emily. "This is your opportunity," I said. She looked at it, then at me. "What is it?" she asked. "Something real," I replied. Daniel leaned forward slightly, his attention sharpening again. Emily opened the folder slowly. Her eyes moved across the first page, then the second, and I watched the exact moment she understood what she was reading. Her fingers tightened just slightly, not dramatically, not enough for someone else to notice, but I saw it. "This is a legal agreement," she said quietly. "Yes," I replied. She kept reading, and the silence stretched. Daniel looked between us, confused now. "What kind of agreement?" I answered before she could. "One that removes any financial incentive from this marriage." That got his full attention. Emily finally looked up. "This means," she started, then stopped, processing it again. "It means," I continued calmly, "that if you remain in this marriage, you do so without any expectation of gaining access to family assets. Not now. Not later. Not under any circumstances you can control." Daniel's expression changed. Not shock. Understanding. Slow, but clear. "And if she leaves," he asked. "Then she leaves with nothing beyond what is legally required," I said. Emily closed the folder halfway, her eyes still on the pages. "This is permanent?" she asked. "Yes." "No loopholes," she pressed.
No.
That was important. Very important. Because now there was nothing left to interpret. Nothing left to manipulate. Just a choice. Pure and simple. For a long moment, no one spoke. And I realized something in that silence. This was the first time since I met her that Emily had no advantage. No strategy. No safe angle. Only a decision. I didn't rush her. I didn't explain further. I let the weight of it sit exactly where it belonged. Finally, she closed the folder completely and placed it on the table. Daniel watched her closely.
So did I.
If I sign this, she said slowly, there's no safety net.
No, irablia.
If things don't work out, she continued, I walk away with nothing. Yes. She nodded once, absorbing that fully. Then she asked something I didn't expect. Would you sign it too? She said, looking at Daniel. He blinked slightly. What? If I'm giving up that protection, she said, then so are you. No advantages on either side. That caught me off guard. It wasn't necessary. It wasn't expected. And it wasn't beneficial to her, which meant it might be real. Daniel looked at me briefly. I didn't answer for him. This had to be his choice. After a moment, he nodded. All right. That was it. Simple.
Direct.
Emily reached for the pen I had placed beside the folder. She held it for a second, not dramatically, not hesitating in fear, but in consideration, like someone who understood exactly what they were about to do and chose it anyway. Then she signed. No speech. No emotional display. Just a clean, steady signature. She slid the folder toward Daniel. He looked at it for a moment longer, then signed as well. And just like that, the balance shifted. Not back to what it was before. Never that. But into something new. Something uncertain. But real. Emily leaned back slightly, exhaling slowly, as if releasing something she had been holding onto for a long time. I know this doesn't fix anything, she said quietly. I know I don't deserve trust. Daniel didn't respond immediately, but he didn't look away either. I'm not asking for things to go back to normal, she continued. I'm asking for a chance to build something different. That was the first honest sentence she had spoken without trying to shape the outcome.
And I recognized it.
Because there was no guarantee in it. No control. Only risk. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, We'll see. Not forgiveness. Not rejection. Something in between. And for now, that was enough. Later, after she left, Daniel stayed behind. He didn't speak right away. He just stood there, looking at the table, at the folder, at everything that had just happened. Do you think she meant it? He asked finally. I didn't answer immediately, because this time, the answer wasn't simple. I think, I said slowly, that she gave up the one thing she always depended on. He nodded slightly. And, he asked. And that's not something people do lightly, I replied. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. I don't know what happens next, he said. Neither do I admitted. And that was the truth. For the first time in all of this, I didn't have a plan. I had done what I needed to do. I had protected my son. I had forced the truth into the open. Now, what came next wasn't up to me.
It was up to them.
As I stood alone later that night, looking out at the garden once again, I realized something had changed, not just in them, but in me too. I had started this determined to expose a lie, to protect what mattered, to control the outcome as much as possible.
But life doesn't work like that.
People don't either. They break. They choose. They change. Or they don't. And sometimes, the hardest part isn't uncovering the truth. It's deciding what to do with it. I didn't know if Emily would become someone different. I didn't know if Daniel would ever trust her again. But I knew one thing. This time, whatever happened next would be real. And that was more than we had before.